Hey Duck fans, Kurt here. Welcome to yet another FishDuck one-on-one. Wide receiver Joe Reitzug. He personified Oregon athletics in the 80s and 90s. He wasn't the biggest guy or the fastest or the strongest, but he maximized the talents that he did possess to achieve greatness, consistently making some of the most remarkable acrobatic catches in Oregon Ducks history. From 86 through 90, Joe was guaranteed to wow you at least once a game, making the unbelievable look routine with jaw-dropping catches, becoming a favorite target of Bill Musgrave. It's such a pleasure to welcome him now to the FishDuck One-on-One, Joe Reitzug. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing great, Kurt. Thanks for having me.
Oh, this is fantastic. As I told you before, I will try not to go super fanboy on you, but on a personal level, it's a huge thrill for me to talk to you. I grew up watching you. You are my all-time favorite Oregon Duck player.
And I got to tell you, I'm really flattered, and I really appreciate that.
Well, the reason why you are my all-time favorite player is growing up watching you every game would go out there and just make the amazing look routine. You would make the sideline toe-tapping catch. You'd make the deep touchdown flying through the air like a ballerina, and you'd get up like it was no big deal. How in the world did you so nonchalantly shrug it off like it was no big deal when you defied physics and gravity time and time again?
It's one of those things where, it started when I was a young boy in Indiana. And, in Indiana, we lived in a neighborhood that had a ton of trees. And so we would rake all the leaves out of the way, and we'd have a playing field, but then you'd have these leaves on the sidelines and in the end zones so that you could run and make those grabs and jump into the leaves and doing all that. When I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, that's what we did. And as we got older, I don't know, I just kind of developed something where maybe I just wasn't smart enough to know better. When you're going over the middle and you're going to make a catch and they're throwing you the ball, I was always taught, and I always focused in on 100% focus on what you were doing. And if that meant catching the ball and then realizing that you had, Eric Turner from UCLA, Junior Seau from SC, Mark Carrier from SC, these guys bearing down on you, trying to take your head off, well, you got to make the catch, and then what happens after that happens. I guess I just didn't know better, and I really, I'm extremely competitive, like a lot of the guys in my recruiting class in '86. And guys like Bill Musgrave and Tony Hargain, Michael McClellan, Derek Lavelle, those guys were not going to be denied. And I certainly wasn't going to be the one that came up short. And, we all kind of fed off of that. And it was my job to bring the ball down and make the catches when they called on me. So.
Well, somehow, some way kind of defines you as a player, because you came in the midst of what I think is a real watershed moment in Oregon sports. And that was the 1986 football recruiting class. You mentioned some of the names: Bill Musgrave, Derek Laville, Latin Berry, Terry Obie, Tony Hargain. So many NFL players came out of that group. And you as a wide receiver came in, and you're looking at Terry Obie, who has world-class speed, and Tony Hargain, who's the NFL model build of raw physical athletic talent. Right. And here's Joe Reitzug, the walk-on, and you earned your way onto the field. You earned playing time, extensive playing time, and really became the favorite target of Bill Musgrave, who set every passing record there was at Oregon. How are you able to work your way up the depth chart into getting a chance to play alongside guys like Obie and Hargain and Sam Archer and McClellan, world-class talents at wide receiver?
That's a good question, and part of it, I think, just goes to some opportunity. And my true freshman year, I actually traveled a few games because we were so depleted with injuries. J.J. Burden, Rod Green, Jan Cespedes, all those guys were dinged up in one way or another. And, I came in, and as a freshman, it goes back to really, when I was younger, I did not, for whatever reason, I just did not get fazed by the environment or who I was playing against or anything. It was just football, and I was playing, and if they throw me the ball, I'm going to do it. If they teach me something, I'm going to learn it, type of thing. And, that served me well. And as I came around and got a little bit more experience, I learned the offense very quickly. I learned how to execute the offense and not make mistakes, and also do the little things. I really love blocking because, like I mentioned before, you get to be the hammer and not the nail, and so that's a big thing. But also consistently making the catch, and I think when you come up in the Pac-10, you face a different level of competition that you did in high school. And I'm not saying that I had great competition where I was coming from. We had some good competition, but when you catch the ball consistently, when you are in the place where you're supposed to be consistently, and you're constantly working as hard as you can, that gets noticed. And I just happened to get in the right position at the right time. And I was lucky that I was with a program that was where they were in time for me to get opportunities. I don't think that would have happened at a Washington. Right? I don't think a walk-on got to where they were. And right. Maybe, I don't know, at that time, probably not. Some of the other programs, probably not. But at Oregon, they were all about bottom-line production. And if you could play, you were going to play. And Coach Brooks, who is an amazing man, amazing coach, and I have all the respect in the world for him, was one of those guys that he didn't care what your name was or what it said on your jersey and your stat line and your media book. If you were going to go out and play hard and play as a team, he'd take you on his team and you'd get on the field eventually.
Well, for you, teams can recruit guys who run a 4.3 speed, but there's not a lot of guys that are able to catch literally everything that is thrown in their general direction and to do all the little things that you did. Certainly block and decoy and float through the air like a ballerina. I can't say that enough. You were the most airborne receiver I've ever seen in my life. You spent more time in the air than you did on the ground.
Right.
Was that something that coaches worked with you on, or did it just kind of come naturally? And how did the coaches help you to become a better player?
My coach, John Ramsdale, was a very good coach and still is a good coach. I think he's with the Chargers right now, if I'm not mistaken. But Rammer was a very different style of coaching. But as far as, the acrobatics and this or that or anything, no, I mean, it was all bottom line. You make the catch, you do what you have to do to get it done. And so as far as how you make the catch, no, they were just, you make the catch, and however you do it is up to you. A lot of times, Bill had a great sense of humor, or has a great sense of humor, and he's just, there were some times we'd be watching film, and I remember I ran an out and up against, I forget who was it against. It was at Autzen, and I beat the guy bad. Very bad, and he launched it out there pretty good, and I was going down the sidelines fast as I could, and I thought, I'm going to go 80 on this thing, and I look up and the ball is overthrown, and I dive and stretch all the way out and make the catch and come down, and the game goes on. I think we won the game. We're watching film on Sunday or Monday, and Bill, I'm sitting next to him, and he kind of elbows me, and he goes, if you were a little better athlete, we would have gone 80 yards on that one.
Thanks, Bill.
Else pat me on the back. Great catch, Joe. Great, nice play, this and that. And Bill kind of looks at me. He's like, real athlete would have caught that in stride.
I'm sure there's times when you and old teammates get together at a game, start looking around and thinking, it would have been nice to have had this when I was playing.
Yeah, there's always a little bit of that, but, I never... There's not a lot of that because everything that is at that stadium now was hard-earned. The respect that they get now has been hard-earned over many, many, many years. And, I'm just happy to have been a little itty-bitty part of it. And it's always fun to reminisce and talk about it and get to kind of be happy about where they're at now.
What a difference a year makes between your junior and senior year. Because you're dealing with those locker rooms and crossing the street and everything. And then senior year comes around, Casanova Center. All of a sudden you have a legitimate weight room. You have a legitimate locker room. How much of a culture shock was it when you got accustomed to the way it was, and then all of a sudden, here's the Casanova Center. Enjoy.
Well, the CAS Center wasn't finished by the start of fall camp. It had the locker rooms were finished, and I think the weight room was pretty much finished, if I remember right. But the treatment center in there was not finished. And I remember we had we had a team meeting, and the captains and the reps for each of the classes, after practice one day at the end of fall camp, Coach Brooks said, we got our captains meeting, our representatives meeting. We're going to meet out here, and Coach Brooks, we had one of those practices where, I don't know, sometimes it just didn't go the way he wanted. I thought we always practiced great, but Coach, sometimes it didn't go according to his plan, and I think we had one of those practices, and we had our meeting, and he said, all right, we're going to take a vote. You guys can vote for who wants to stay in our old locker rooms and who wants to move to the new locker rooms. Make the vote. Let me know how it goes. And he walked off. And so we're all sitting there, and we're looking at each other, and we're like, should we be debating this? Or we're going to move into the new locker rooms, right? And we kind of look at each other, we're like, yeah, okay, great. Meeting adjourned. Let's get out of here. We're moving into the new locker rooms, So we went in there, and it was the Taj Mahal compared to where we were. And we're all very thankful. And, it was one of those things that people that came to the stadium for the game day, also the visiting teams, and the recruiting that they were able to do around that, it made an instant impact, and it was money well spent. So they did a great job with it.
Independence Bowl aside, that's the one bowl victory that you got, so certainly that's a benchmark. Do you have a personal favorite game? Certainly there's some from the fan perspective that stand out. The 90 BYU game, beating a top 5 team and the eventual Heisman Trophy winner. Maybe personal favorite play. I know you were featured on ESPN as a play of the week, and just any individual memories from games that really stand out to you.
BYU was a lot of fun. BYU was a ton of fun, and just the shootout with Detmer was very interesting to watch, because we had a really good defense, and we'd come off the field, and then all of a sudden it was like, all right, we're up, here we go, and we'd go down the field and score, and then we get on the bench, and they got another touchdown. We got to go out there. It was just back and forth, and that was one of those games where they couldn't stop us. There was no way that they were going to stop us, and their corners were both ended up being pretty good players, but I think one of the guys was pretty young, and we were just turning him around like a top. And the other guy was a little bit older, but he just could not figure out the double move, the post corner. So, if you watch the tape of those games, there's a pattern. We were running the same patterns over and over and over. But that one was a satisfying one, because they...
89, they beat you, so...
89, they beat us. And 90 was real satisfying, because in 89, they talked a ton. They had a linebacker that was all whack or whatever, and he was talking a ton in the game. And one of my favorite plays was we did a crack screen. And on that play, I get to come down, and if the outside linebacker comes, then I go to the middle linebacker, and their big stud was the middle linebacker. And I hit him so hard that I hit him, and I remember the next thing I saw was his feet up in the air. And I remember getting up, and I remember the other BYU linebacker looking at me like, golly. And, he was looking out of his ear hole a little bit, and he was all upset, saying that he was going to find me and this and that. And that's so fun when you're the little guy on the field, and you can get a big guy like that all riled up.
Right.
But that game was a lot of fun. 90, we came back, and 90 was very workmanlike, very businesslike. It was just, hey, listen, this is what we're going to get done. And that was another one of those games where it was national TV, and we were just going to get the job done, and it was a good feeling.
Your time as a Duck, 86 through 90, and then, as you said, you went into coaching for a little while. But tell us a little bit about post-college life for Joe Reitzug.
A lot of the lessons that I learned from my time, 86 to 90, in Eugene, have been very, very good lessons for life later on. I coached high school for a few years. I coached small college up at Western Washington for a year, and then I went to U of O and coached 93, 94, and went to the Rose Bowl with Coach Brooks and his staff. And I have a great amount of respect for what professional football coaches do, and the coaches at the university are true professionals, and they dedicate their lives to enriching the lives of those players and getting a product on the field that's going to win games for the university and represent the university. That being said, you spend a ton of time, like no other job you'll ever see, preparing for and living for every single test on Saturday. And then in the off season, you spend a ton of time. And it's not conducive to having a family. And for me personally, I wanted to have kids. I wanted to be in one city and not be in Lubbock, Pocatello, all the different places that you have to go as a coach. So I made the choice to get out of coaching, and I went into real estate, and I was a real estate broker from 95 until today. I still have my license. I sold for a number of years and then had my own company, and then went back to my company, John L. Scott Real Estate, and got into management. And now I'm the regional vice president for Oregon and Southwest Washington for the company, and I'm responsible for all operations in Oregon and Vancouver. So,
what do you want people to remember of your playing days?
I'd like people to appreciate how hard the players played and practiced and prepared for what they saw on Saturdays. And there was a ton of work behind the scenes that you never see. And there were a ton of really, really good players and really, really good young men that they didn't see on Saturday. And it's one of those things where if you liked football back then, what you see now, you've got to love and always be positive. I've been to a lot of stadiums and been around a lot of other schools' fans, and I got to say, 2 thumbs up to Duck fans, because from '86 when I started there till now, I couldn't be more proud. And the other thing is, thank you for everything that the Duck faithful have done, all the money they contribute, all the time they contribute, and all the passion that they give for the program, because it's a pretty special thing. I mean, you see it when you go to the games, and the people that you talk to, it is a passionate thing now. And it's certainly something special that we should cherish and also protect and make sure that it's done the right way. The mindset, the lifestyle, the way people treat each other, you get tagged as the hippie place and this and that and all that. And, that's from people that have either never been there or can't appreciate that type of community. And I've been to all the Pac-10 campuses and spent some time at all the Pac-10 communities, as well as a bunch of other schools around the country. There is not a better community to send your son to play college football and to be coached at and to get an education at, in my mind. And I've seen a ton of them. And the combination of the community, the university, and the athletic staff is rare. And it's a neat thing. And that's really has a lot to do with the recruiting success that they've had now. Obviously, winning a ton of games does not hurt.
It helps.
It helps. And playing a certain style, both offensive and defensively, helps. But in the end, people are only going to choose to go to a place where they feel wanted and they feel like is going to be a good place for them to grow during some very important years. And Eugene should be very proud, because they've created that community there, and it's special. I love it there.
Thank you, Joe, so much for joining us on the FishDuck One-on-One. And as always, go Ducks.
Go Ducks!